Good day everyone, especially to mga cabreros and to the panelists who really capacity. My name is Jennifer F. Candelario, the leader of Group 8. Together with me are
I am Diareca Fernandez.
I am Aubrey Hilugu.
I'm Josh Nicole P. Tayak.
And I am Sheila B. Vihiliado.
And we are the Group 8 from HRDM 3A, taking up a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from EARIST, Manila.
For today, we will present our research study entitled The Efficacy of Exposing Fully Vaccinated CBPA-EARIST Students to Face-to-Face Education. We come up with this study because we observe that there is a negative and poor educational system that most of the students encountered during pandemic. Examples are lack of budgets and gadgets, lack of motivations, poor internet connections, as well as experiencing stress. While other students decided to take a gap year in the academic year during pandemic.
According to UAMNL in 2020, around 3 million students in the Philippines have either not enrolled in school at all or have not returned to it in 2020 to 2021 academic year. This COVID-19 pandemic forced the students to take a gap year.
Furthermore, many Filipinos struggle to study at home during the COVID-19 pandemic due to a lack of motivation as well as social media and gaming distractions.
While in vaccination for COVID-19, according to Montemayor in 2021, the Commission of Higher Education urged college students to get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 in preparation for the reopening of face-to-face classes in the selected college degree program.
Also, vaccine is one of the most effective public health tools for promoting health and lowering the burdens of infectious diseases. They also lead to significant socioeconomic returns, not child mortality but in terms of education.
That is why our group decided to conduct a study on the effectiveness of getting fully vaccinated in preparation for the face-to-face education. Since vaccine is one of the key for us to return to the normal life and to face-to-face education in college and university here in the Philippines in order for us to obtain a high-quality education.
The findings of this study will be beneficial to government, institutions, faculties, parents, and students by providing additional information about the effectiveness of reopening the face-to-face education for fully vaccinated students. This study will serve as a guide and source of information for many Filipinos as well as a key for the reopening of face-to-face education. We base our study to the theory called high-resolution agent-based model that is proposed to examine the interactions between the increased immunity provided by the vaccine rollout and transmission risks associated with the reopening efforts. The model is based on the earlier ABM developed by Ferguson's research group to study pandemic influenza, which has been recently adapted to study COVID-19. The system approach in this study will be utilized through the use of input, process, and output, or IPO model. It will serve as a guide for gathering data and selecting the appropriate way to solve the problem.
The input consists of the statement of the problem of our research study, which are the demographic profile of the respondents, the preference of the students in new normal education, the effectiveness of getting fully vaccinated in preparation for the reopening of face-to-face education, and the significant relationship of the major two variables of the study.
The process. The process reflects the chronology of the steps in conducting the gathering data through Google Forms survey questionnaire, distributing and collecting the survey questionnaire, statistical treatment, analysis, and interpretation of the data.
Output. This study will be the research itself. The efficacy of exposing fully vaccinated CBPA-EARIST students to face-to-face education. That's all for the input, process, output, or IPO model. Back to you, Ms. Candelario.
Thank you, Ms. Sinugin. Now we move on to the statement of the problem. The researchers identify and outline the problems and issues that the study will address.
For the statement of the problem, question number 1. What is the demographic profile of the respondents? In this question, it will help us to determine if we reach the target respondents of our study and if the data we collected from the participants is accurate and reliable.
Statement of the problem number 2. How does the preferences of fully vaccinated students in adapting to new normal education? Since we have observed in our surrounding that the majority of the students experienced difficulties during pandemic. These researchers will identify whether the fully vaccinated students prefer online education or face-to-face education.
SOP number 3. How effective is it to expose fully vaccinated students to face-to-face education? The main goal of the study, which is to determine how effective and safe it is for the students to get fully vaccinated in preparation for the reopening of face-to-face education.
Lastly, for our statement of the problem, question number 4. Is there any significant relationship between fully vaccinated students and face-to-face education? In our study, we use the null hypothesis. So it means that we hypothesizes that there is no significant relationship between the two major variables in our study. That's why we want to measure if there is any significant relationship between our independent and dependent variable.
Research design. This study takes on a descriptive method of research conducting through Google Form survey questionnaire in gathering the respondents' evaluation on the efficacy of exposing fully vaccinated CBPA-EARIST students to face-to-face education.
The statistical treatment that our group will going to use are: first is the frequency. These are the number of repetitions of the respondents respond to specific questions in the questionnaire. Second is the percentage. This statistical tool will be used to compute the percentage of the demographic data according to the age, sex, and courses of the respondent. Third is the weighted mean. This statistical tool will be used to compute the weighted mean of each question to determine the interpretation of each problem. Fourth is the Likert scale. In this study, we will use the 5 Likert scale as the standard for data clarification. In our study, we will use 2 different kinds of Likert scale for verbal interpretation of the data. First is the level of agreement. As you can see on the table that we use a Likert scale from 5 to 1 that has an equivalent range from 5.00 to 1.00 and verbal description on each attribute. We will use this to analyze the respondent's level of agreement or disagreement with the survey questionnaires question. This Likert scale will be used in our SOP number 2. Second is the level of effectiveness. As you can see on the table that we will use a Likert scale from 5 to 1 that has an equivalent range from 5.00 to 1.00 and verbal description on each attribute. We will use this to analyze and specify the level of effectiveness of exposing fully vaccinated students to face-to-face education. This Likert scale will be used for SOP number 3 in our study. The last statistical tool that we will use is the correlation. Since in our study, our group hypothesizes that there is no significant relationship between the fully vaccinated students and face-to-face education. We will use this statistical tool to measure and examine if there is a significant relationship between the independent and dependent variable of our study.
And that will be the chapter 1 to 3 of our research study entitled The Efficacy of Exposing Fully Vaccinated CBPA-EARIST Students to Face-to-Face Education. Again,
We are the Group 8. Thank you and God bless everyone.